Hello, and in this video we're going to look at my 5 top tips to finding the right nutrition plan for you. That is healthy and is going to last. And what I mean by that is you're going to be able to stay on it, keep it going on it, and actually see some results going forward. So that's this video. Hi, my name is Mark and I'm here to help you live a better, healthier life. My goal is to help as many people as I can get into shape and improve their quality of life. Now, if this is your first time here and you want to learn more about practical and effective ways to improve your health, fitness and overall wellness, or if you're just interested in learning more about nutrition and exercise, please do hit the subscribe button and we'll be notified of all the videos upcoming. Now, without further ado, let's jump right in. So my first tip here is maybe an obvious one. This is a nutrition plan rather than a diet. Speaking as somebody who's tried virtually every diet out there over the years, I've come to realise that what you're actually looking to do is have a nutrition plan that you can stick with, that you can actually do long term. I've tried 3-day diets and from the Heart Foundation and everything else for quick weight loss, and one thing I've noticed is whenever you're doing those, you're actually likely to yo-yo in terms of your weight. You're likely to stop the diet and then binge on all the things you missed because you were cutting them out during that particular diet. So my first tip here is look at this as a way of life, as a nutrition plan going forward rather than a short-term diet. Find things, and we'll talk about those in a second, but find things that you can do long-term, that you can keep on doing and are repeatable, not just 3 days for this or a week for that or 2 weeks for that. Now, I'm not saying you can't do some of that as well, and in particular times in my journey so far, I have decided to restrict my eating for a particular purpose, to lose a particular amount of weight before going back to my healthy nutritional plan. But this is the long run. This is not something you want to be doing day in, day out. You will end up getting to the end of a period or breaking the diet as you go through, and then you will end up eating all kinds of the wrong food in the wrong amounts at the wrong times, and you will end up putting some, if not all, of the weight back on. What we're going to talk about here today in the other tips is how to find the right thing. But the first thing is look at this as a way of life, a plan going forward to correct all those months, years of mistakes you've made in the past, and don't look at it as a short-term diet. If you do that, you will set yourself up to failure. So the tip number 1 is don't look at this as a diet. Look at this as a way of life going forward, a change you're going to make and keep consistently in your life going forward. So it is really a nutrition plan, not a diet. Just before we go on to number 2, what nutrition plan are you following? There are lots out there, from intermittent fasting to Noom to all sorts of other ones. I'd like to know what you are doing and what you're following, so please do leave a comment in the comment section, and if you're enjoying the video so far, hit the like button. Okay, tip number 2. Now, at the heart of any weight loss journey is the fact that you need to be taking in less calories than you are actually using. Yeah, that calorie deficit is the key to any kind of weight loss, whether it's short-term or long-term. I think we all know by now my view of healthy weight loss in terms of setting healthy goals and going for it. But it is one of those things where bear that in mind as you're going through. But tip number 2 is not about calorie deficits or anything else, because any diet, any plan, any nutrition plan can be more calories than you need or less calories than you need. But one of the things to think about is once you have the calories you're meant to be looking for and aiming towards, make sure that you feel full. So what I mean by that is don't go for a diet that heavily restricts the foods you can have, that heavily restricts the volumes you can have and everything else. One of the mistakes I've made in the past is having calorie dense foods, which means smaller portions. You eat it, it's tasty, it's nice, it's all the rest of it, flavors and all the rest of it, but then half an hour later you feel like you could eat it again. The problem with that kind of a nutrition plan is that you probably will at some point decide to raid the cupboards and the fridge because you're hungry. So one of the things I'm a proponent for is the volume eating idea. So you have your proteins, you can have your carbs and everything else. We'll talk about those a little bit later. But what I try and do is pack into that as much high volume, low calorie food as I can, which is mostly vegetables, particularly your green vegetables, your kales, your cabbages, your broccolis, and all the rest of it. What actually that means is that you end up eating a big plate of food that still keeps you under your calories that you're trying to take in, but it means that you're full. You stay full for longer. Even the soups and things that are made, lots of vegetables, lots of green vegetables and things in there. And it's one of those things where staying with that idea of fairly high volume but filling is a great way to make sure that the nutrition plan you choose, you stick to. One interesting tidbit here, and I certainly couldn't do it myself, but one of the reasons why a lot of people lose a lot of weight when they become a vegetarian or a vegan is because going that direction means that they end up eating fairly high volume, low calorie foods that fill them up, they feel good, but actually don't have that many calories. Now, I said I couldn't do it. I've tried. For me, I do need my protein and things in there. That's what gives me that satiated, full feeling to go along with the high volume food in terms of the vegetables. So, second tip is whatever the nutrition plan you choose for yourself, and there is no particular right and wrong as long as you're on a calorie deficit, make sure that you feel full on it. Because if you feel full, you are not going to be as tempted to stray off that nutrition plan and find something else to eat in between your meals. So, tip number 2 is make sure that whatever plan you are choosing, you are making sure that it is volume enough for you, whatever that is. Okay? So if you're interested in small portions but more often, if you're interested in the OMAD 1 meal a day, intermittent fasting, all of those things, in my opinion, you try them and you try it for a week or two and you see whether it works for you. Because at the heart of it, as long as you're feeling full, so you're not raiding the cupboards and you are under your calories, you will lose weight. How much depends on everything else, but that is a good starting point. So tip number 2, make sure that you're feeling full on your diet so that you're not raiding the cupboards and the fridge for something else to eat later on in the day. Okay, so feeling full, number 2. Okay, so number 3, cravings. The nutrition plan you pick, we've talked about calorie deficit, we've talked about feeling full, but cravings are something that quite often over the years pushed me over the edge and made me have a bad nutrition plan. That's wrong. That's a lie. The nutrition plan isn't bad. I just haven't been able to stick to it for long enough for it to do any good, and that's quite often down to cravings. So it's one of those things where when you're looking at your nutrition plan, when you are actually sitting there and working out what you're going to eat, be mindful of what things you crave. Is it the sweet? Is it the savoury? Is it a mixture? What can you do to factor into your nutrition plan something that satiates your craving for something, right, but doesn't push you off your plan? So some examples in that. If you're somebody who likes something sweet, yes, I'm not suggesting you eat a whole bar of chocolate, whether it's Hershey's or Cadbury's, but if you like something sweet, how about zero fat yogurt with some honey in it? It's enough to take the sweetness off. Or zero fat yogurt with some apple in it, chopped up and cut up. It's one of those things that there are lots of ways to get through that craving. Just know that you have them and have something to actually compensate for it. So if it's savoury, and you want to raid the crisps for a bit of crunch, okay, what about something like hummus and carrot sticks? There's a bit of crunch, there's a bit of taste, they fill you up. It is all one of those things that have a look at your cravings. What are they? One of the things that I'm really bad for, apart from portion sizes, is I love pasta. Right? I love it. Absolutely love it. And I love rice, and I love all of those things. But things like cauliflower rice as a volume piece, it is one of those things that just absorbs the flavour. You can have it instead of rice. With pasta, have a whole grain rather than anything else. But it's part of this finding the right nutrition plan for you, okay, one that you can actually stick to and is healthy, is all about realising what are your pinch points. What are the things that make you grab that bag of crisps, right? Now, it's one of those things where we're not worrying today about the reason for grabbing that bag of crisps. What we're trying to do is find a substitute for that bag of crisps when you're going for it, or that sweet thing that you want. Now, if you are reserved enough, if you are controlled enough to have the multi-packs of sweets in the house and just take one, then great, maybe you can get away with that as long as you factor it into your calorie deficit. But if you're somebody a bit like me who isn't very good at stopping at the one mini bag of sweets and will pretty much eat the entire bag, then look at alternatives. Things like yogurt and honey, zero fat, not low fat, zero fat and honey, hummus and carrots, or some other healthier dip of choice. It's one of those things that in there, it is, how can I put this, you're setting yourself again up to success if you have some things in your fridge or in your cupboard that you can reach for instead of the chocolate bar and the crisps, and have that as your plan. It is one of those things that, again, as long as you're within your calorie deficit, getting an apple and some cheese from the fridge is far better than reaching for that big bag of crisps and eating the packet. So be aware of what your cravings are. Be aware of what you often fall off the wagon for, and have an option that you've got that is either healthy or healthier than what you would have fallen off the bandwagon for. So that for me is tip number 3, which is cravings. Okay, realize that you have them, think about what yours are, and have something that you would like as a replacement for them that is healthy or healthier than it would have been. So tip number 3, cravings. Okay, number 4. For me, out of all the others, this is probably one of the bigger ones for me, which is variety. It is one of those things out there, and I tried it a few weeks ago when I was really focusing on the diet, and I went down the whole chicken and broccoli route. After about 2 days, I was sick of chicken and broccoli, and when I started throwing in herbs and spices and hot sauces and things to make it a little bit interesting, it really got tired very quickly. And I have to say, by the end of that first week, I have absolutely no idea how people can live on chicken and broccoli. I can't do it. So what you can do is try and throw into their variety. Now, in moderation, there is nothing that's particularly wrong. I know that some people watching this will be on low carb or no carb or whatever else, and those are restrictions that you're choosing to have that you're okay with. But most people like variety. So it's one of those things that, how can I have my potatoes, my rices, my pastas, as well as a healthy selection of vegetables, maybe some fruits if you like them. That's one thing I'm very bad on. Your proteins, all the rest of it. What I would say is that there is nothing wrong with having potatoes or rice or pasta. You're best off having a variety of food depending on how varied you like it, just as long as you factor that in. So it's one of those things where, for me, don't be having 3/4 of your plate piled high with potatoes. Limit the actual portion size of those heavily starchy, more calorie dense vegetables, and have more on your plate that is that leafy green type low calorie food, because that's what will fill you up. The potatoes, the rice, the pasta gives you, meets your craving, gives you variety, but it is one of those things where a plate full of rice is far more calorie dense than a plate full of cabbage. Okay, so don't restrict yourself too much. Add that variety in there. That'll help with the previous one in terms of having the cravings. Because if you cut out potatoes entirely for your diet and you love potatoes, then you're going to start craving them, then they're going to creep in the wrong way. So have variety in your diet. Although they say chicken is the leanest meat and it's healthy, there is nothing wrong from throwing other meats and things in there, to give you that variety. Just always bear in mind that the variety cannot come at the cost of your calorie deficit. So throw the variety in there, throw the different flavors in there, whatever you want, but make sure it is within your calorie deficit. And here's one thing. For quite a while, I cut out potatoes entirely from my diet, because unless I had, your kind of fried chips or your roast potatoes, I wasn't particularly interested in potatoes. But have a look out there, and it is something you'd have to buy, but things like air fryers, they use a tiny amount of oil, and you can even get that spray, low calorie stuff to use instead. But with a bit of salt and maybe some cayenne spices or whatever, you can chop up a potato, throw it in the air fryer. You can have something that feels like you're having a deep fried chip, but is using a fraction of the oil that you would in a deep fat fry or even shallow frying. So think about that. If a particular craving of yours is chips, then stop getting the frozen chips, the takeaway chips, the fast food chips, or putting yourself off them by having something that doesn't feel like you're eating a chip. And maybe have a look at something like an air fryer, where you can feel like you're having a chip, you can feel like that potato is as unhealthy as you like, but actually that you've used a tiny, like a teaspoonful of oil in a whole thing of chips for two people. So bear that in mind with your variety. It is one of those things that you need to have variety in your diet to keep you interested, and remembering this is not a diet for a week or for 3 days or for 2 weeks or for a month. What we're trying to build to here is a nutrition plan that you are going to be able to stay on and keep on for the long term. Okay, so in order to do that for the long term, I really do feel like variety is the key. And that's not just in terms of the flavors you're using, whether it's Cajun, spiced, whether it's chili, whether it's curries, whatever those flavor profiles are. The variety comes from not only the spices you're using, but also the food you're eating. So don't just cut out a particular type of food because it's unhealthy. If that food is something that you love to eat, look at ways of getting it into your nutrition plan in a healthier way and in the right volumes. So for me, number 4 is variety, and that is a key to having a nutrition plan you can stick to in the long run. Okay, number 5. We're getting there. We are. Honestly, we're getting there. Number 5 is one of those things where we hear it a lot. Start cutting out the processed foods and eating more of the whole grain type foods. And it's one of those things that advice for me always sounded really easy, yet not very easy to do. You start looking at what loaves to eat and loaves of bread to eat. You start looking at all those other foods and processed. But for me, it came down to a few little changes that were easy to make, but were actually quite important in the long run. So the whole idea here is the more processed the food is, the more, human intervention in terms of making that, the less nutrition you get and the less full you feel in the long run. The whole idea of whole grains and all that kind of stuff is that it takes your body longer to process it, so therefore it doesn't get as much energy out of it all at once. It's taking longer to process it, so you'll feel fuller for longer. And those, for me, have to be a good thing. If you're trying to go for a nutrition plan that is a calorie deficit, surely feeling full for longer is good, because it will help those earlier things of avoiding cravings and all the rest of it. So for me, it's one of those things where, what simple changes can you make to make this a nutrition plan you can stick to without actually skipping entire food groups? So I have always been a lover of a white pappy bread. I have. Okay, I don't eat very much bread, but when I do eat bread, I would prefer a white. I tried all of these, kind of nutty, seedy breads, and they were okay, but you can't beat a white bread. So I started looking for a compromise, something that I knew wasn't going to be a white bread, but something that wasn't going to be one of these seedy, batchy type things either, which I just didn't like. So in the end, I found a particular wholemeal loaf from a particular supermarket that I really like. And it's one of those things that I'm always going to prefer, I'm always going to prefer a white loaf. That's just a fact. But I found an alternative that I am happy with, that I don't mind eating. Since I don't eat bread too often, a wholemeal loaf that is actually tasty, which is actually something I can enjoy, is a good substitute. But the easier ones for me were things like pasta. Rather than getting your white normal pasta, for a few pence more you can get wholemeal pasta. Something that is slightly darker in colour, takes a little bit longer in terms of cooking, but actually once it's cooked, apart from the colour, you can't taste much difference to it. But the fact is, it is just a little bit better for you. So those are the changes that you can make quite simply. I mean, the big ones are make your sauces for your bolognese or whatever, from scratch. That will also save you money, but it'll also taste nicer, and you know what's gone into it. One of the things that shocked me about a lot of the processed foods is the amount of sugars and other things that they put into them that I'd never really thought about it. Salt is another one. Having a bought jar of tomato sauce has a lot of hidden, in inverted commas, I know it's on the label, but you don't think about it. You think the tomato sauce is tomatoes, but actually there's lots of salts and sugars in there that you don't think about. So therefore they become hidden calories. They can throw you off your planning. Anything that has extra steps in it generally has extra things thrown in too. So if you can go back to the basics and have less processed food, if you like a smooth tomato sauce, invest in a few herbs and spices in your cupboard. There are lots of videos out there in terms of what to use. You can work out exactly what you like, and you can use anything from chopped plum tomatoes to passata to make a sauce as smooth or as thick as you like. And you'll know exactly what's in it. Therefore you can account for that. So it's one of those things with less processed. There are some obvious ones there. Having a little bit of honey on a slice of toast is better than having your Nutellas and things because of the amount of sugars that are in them. I know that honey is still a sugar, but it's a healthier sugar and you can control the amount than having something that is overly processed. So when you're looking at your nutrition plan, have a think about the level of processed food you're eating. Can you have a wholemeal bread or a seedy batchy bread, rather than that white bread? Can you have wholemeal pasta rather than a white pasta? I have to confess that I've not been able to move to your wild, rices and things. That seems to me to be a step too far for me. So I tend to have normal white rice, but I just tend to have it in smaller portions and less often. So this is all about, you know, your nutrition plan and making the choices that are right for you in your plan. And it's one of those things that please don't view it as a diet. Don't view it as a short-term, you know, get out of jail. Although you can do that occasionally as well. But day to day, week to week, month to month, think about what your nutrition plan is, what it means to you. Because if it is right for you, you'll find it far easier to stick to, and it won't become a chore that you're grudging doing and dreading the next meal, because you know that you like what you're having. And one thing I didn't want to put into the tips on this is the common sense aspects. You know, avoid the highly sugary drinks. Avoid the things that you know are bad for you, even in moderation, unless you have the willpower to have a small amount and move on. You know, if you do crave chocolate to a large extent, maybe have a couple of pieces of, you know, a dark chocolate, you know, high cocoa count chocolate, rather than your dairy milk type chocolates. You know, it's all about looking at your nutrition plan, making sure that you feel full, making sure that your cravings, whatever they are under control, or you have alternatives for them, keeping the variety in your actual diet so you're not suddenly craving something and falling off the bandwagon. And throughout all of that, just try and be mindful and cut down on the amount of processed food you're having, because that's where I found over the years that all those extra calories and salts and everything else start creeping in, because you didn't particularly think about it, because it was just a jar of sauce. So that for me is my top 5 tips in terms of your nutrition plan that you can stick to and last on for the long term in terms of your nutrition and diet going forward. So 5 top tips. As always, thank you very much for listening along and for all the support that's being shown. If you did like this video, please do hit the like button on it, and that helps with the YouTube algorithm. And thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.